Before I knew his politics and his job, I got to know a person who I saw as kind, who was generous, who was sweet, who made me insanely, incredibly happy. And I was like, no man has ever made me feel this way, and I'm 48 years old. Let me feel this fantasy. And I felt it until I think I justified it in my mind until I couldn't anymore.
I want to state plainly, Republicans hate trans people. It has become the banner of that party.
I've never intentionally dated a conservative man. Like the dolls, they also sometimes don't tell people up front. Conservative men love trans women, and I think that is a very interesting piece of the conversation that's constantly missing.
I think the gag is they're like, if Laverne Cox has to make compromises for love, then what does that mean for me?
Laverne, I'm going to give you a lifeline. I have fucked many of MAGA men, but I did it for money, so my coochie's a little more ethical than yours.
Like, just to keep it 100, like, Laverne, you too old, right? I hate to say it, but I have very little tolerance for adults who say things like, oh, I was naive around things.
Don't believe is true is that the only person you were able to receive love from was this New York police officer who is a MAGA Republican that voted for Trump, right? Like, I just don't believe that that's true. I think that at some point we have to be honest about the fact that we need liberation more than we need to be striving for this sort of fantastical idea of love.
Hello, beautiful Black people. Hello.
Hi, friend.
So let me tell you why I've gathered you here today for this very special episode that I have been looking forward to for about a week. Laverne made a post that set the internet on fire. And I love Laverne. I love Laverne. Everybody knows I love Laverne. Laverne is the first celebrity to ever do an interview on my platform. And in that interview, Laverne said something that really resonated. And I think this conversation, the fact that she showed up here for this conversation today, like reflects that. Laverne had told me, Laverne had talked to me at depth about being like willing to be called in and having to be willing to like, hear this feedback and this criticism and all these different things, which like my Leo heart does not take easily. You couldn't catch me listening to 6 people give me their thoughts on anything I did after the internet. Couldn't catch me, could not catch me. But I texted Laverne and I was like, hey, Laverne, someone suggested it to me as an Olay and Friends topic, but I'm not touching that unless you are here to be a participant in that. I'm not going to talk about you. We can talk to you. And by we, I mean y'all. That's not my place as this person. I'm literally about to get us started, hand this off to Laverne and let y'all have the floor. So Laverne, you can tell people what started the controversy, your post, what you said.
Wow. Okay. First of all, it is so beautiful to see all of your faces. I'm insanely excited just to be in all of your company. I love you, Olay. I love the show. I consistently find brilliant, insightful commentary that makes me think. And so I'm really excited to be here on Olay and Friends. I didn't think my first time here would be, I'd be the catalyst for the conversation, but such is life. So I just did a show called Girl, How Did I Get Here at City Winery this past Monday, July 28th. And a week or so ago, I did a live and I teased a part of the show. It's a show about my career and my life, but it's also about my most recent relationship. And the tease was my ex-boyfriend is a, blonde hair, blue-eyed, 26-year-old MAGA Republican, Trump voting New York City police officer. And if you want to know more, go to my show. And people lost their minds. And some of the criticism, the early criticism I saw beyond, so people were like, is she serious? What's going on? Is she okay? Is this a joke? And then the fawning and the sort of fawning over him and the critiques that I think are very legitimate about his blonde hair, blue eyes. Am I like sort of celebrating some kind of white beauty ideal? So I got that. And then people just gagged that, without context, that I had dated someone, who's a MAGA Republican, and there was no context. So there was no sort of context, and some people were confused that they thought I was still with him. He's been my ex-boyfriend actually for over a year. And the reason I wanted to tell this story in my show specifically is I initially thought it would be interesting. I assumed that people knew my politics and knew who I was and thought it would be how can like real love happen between someone who's I thought people thought I understood that I'm clearly politically progressive and someone who's diametrically opposed to my views. And so instead of that, and how does that work or can it work? People, I think the vibe I got, and you guys can tell me more, is that people were like, is she MAGA now? Is she a MAGA sympathizer? Is she making a right-wing pivot? Because so many people are doing that. Is there, oh my, I saw things like suggesting that there was some sort of a race play or slave play thing going on. And I had no idea any of that would come up. So that gagged me. To be clear, I'm not a MAGA. I'm not MAGA. I'm not making a right-wing pivot. I am still, I identify as a leftist progressive. I think my politics sort of line up with a Mamdani, AOC, Sanders kind of situation. If you can, if I can classify my politics, although I have issues with all of those people in different ways. And I also understand, and I think the biggest piece that felt that in retrospect felt tone deaf. I was just kind of I had been rehearsing, so I was in the love because I was deeply in love. So I was sort of speaking from the place when I was deeply in love with this man in that post. And I think the tone deaf part of it is that obviously MAGA is traumatizing people, taking away people's rights. We are in a fascist regime right now. There was a tone deafness to this moment that we're in right now that I just didn't consider, and that makes me really sad because so many people have been hurt, are being hurt by this regime. I understand that. I've spoken out against that many times. I will continue to. And so that I didn't take into consideration the deep trauma that this regime is causing and the pain of that. And then like that, what seemed like probably cognitive dissonance for a lot of people watching me say I dated this person. So those are some of my initial thoughts around all of this. So let go in and let have family.
Well, before folks hop in, I wonder, Laverne, if you can also talk a bit about the fact that this, at least from my understanding, this post comes very soon after the snippet of your interview with T.S. Madison.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. I actually made a note about that. There was a lot of criticism of me, which is interesting, of me because I was critical on the Outlaws podcast with T.S. Madison about Kamala Harris and Kamala Harris and the Biden administration in general. I'm staying 10 toes down without that criticism. I thought that the launch of her campaign had great promise when she was talking about price gouging and focus on price gouging, affordability, abortion. And Tim Walz, I loved him as a pick when he was talking about how weird they are. I thought that was great. The pivot that happened from Democratic consultants midway through, I thought was a misfire. The focus on sort of bringing Liz Cheney on and having this focus be on what is an opportunity economy. And then it was just not a clear enough message. I thought to me, it didn't focus enough on working people. I thought she was trying, they weren't going for the base. They were going for like these Republican, suburban. I thought it was a terrible strategy. And I've been deeply critical of the Biden-Harris administration on multiple issues. I mentioned on the Outlaws podcast, just the minimum wage issue, but there's so many issues I have with Biden-Harris. So I think a lot of Black people are like, well, you're attacking this Black woman. And I think it's like, for me, I mean, I voted for her, and I voted for Biden in 2020 because, you know, those are the options. I don't think voting third party doesn't seem like, you know, an effective strategy for me. So, but I think for me, it's important to be critical. And I think it's important to push the Democratic Party, I think, further to the left. I think, and they're all bought and paid for. They're all like, you know, and I think, I don't know if I said this on the Outlaws podcast, the money that Harris, Biden, all these politicians take, this is why the word salad happens. Because you're like, well, I believe this, but like my donors, like I can't piss off this donor who paid me this amount of money, and I can't. So I'm not going to say anything. And so I think that's a problem. I think any politician, Republican or Democrat, who's taking PAC money, who's taking corporate money, I don't trust them. So that is, and it's not a critic. It has nothing to do with this being a Black woman. This has to do with her policies and her strategy. And so, yeah, go.
Deshaun, were you trying to say that maybe because you made these comments about Kamala and the Democrats prior to putting out that post, that impacted the outrage because people were thinking, oh, you just criticized the Democrats and now you're telling us you're in a relationship with a MAGA guy?
I was in a relationship, yes. Certainly people drew that conclusion, but yes.
Yeah, I think what I was trying to bring up was just that there was this sort of like cognitive dissonance in the overall discourse, because at least for me, and as someone who has been sort of offline, I quite literally saw the clip of you on Outlaw's podcast, and then saw the clip of the live, and I think that was like what made like this big sort of like moment, and so we're just trying to bring that to the forefront around how the commentary or how the discussion got started, how the discourse sort of got started.
Yeah.
What I heard you say is that you're upset that Kamala brought a Republican onto her campaign, but you don't understand why people are upset that you bought a Republican inside of you.
Not that. Or Craytan. I actually, I don't believe Craytan, that I said I didn't understand why people were upset. I don't think I understand why people are upset. I get why people are upset about my Kamala comments. I understand why people are upset about me, particularly. I mean, I engaged with the comments. It was clear why they were upset, and yeah, so I understand why people were upset. So no, I didn't say that. No. One thing I also want to like, I don't know if I said this. When I met my ex, when we matched on Tinder in the fall of 2019. We met in person in July 1st, 2020. He told me he was in commercial real estate. I didn't know that he was a cop or his politics until November of 2020. And by that time, I already had feelings for him, and this is the gag of all gags to me to this day, is that he had treated me better than any man had ever treated me before, in terms of care, in terms of consistency, in terms of just this ease of just being with each other, just affection, love. Like, he looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman in the world. And when he told me his politics, and I was like, oh, okay, girl. And I mentioned in my show that, like, on our first date meeting on July 1st, I was on a defund the police. I would literally say, we need to defund the police. This was 2020. So I was like, on my defund the police thing, and he said to himself, I'm definitely not going to tell him I'm a cop now. So I was in this place of like, and then he said to me, I don't feel safe telling people. And then, like, I was like, well, I get that. And then I saw, before I knew his politics and his job, I got to know a person who I saw as kind, who was generous, who was sweet, who made me insanely, incredibly happy. And I was like, no man has ever made me feel this way. And I'm 48 years old. Let me feel this fantasy. And I felt it and certainly his politics were an issue, and I think I justified it in my mind until I couldn't anymore. And the reason we broke up were his politics. It was for real. And I go into depth in that in my show, and it was bad. It was really bad. But the love I felt and the love that we shared, I had 3.5 blissful years, blissful. And then when it went wrong quickly, and I got out fairly quickly. 6 months, I could have gotten out 6 months earlier, but and I want to hold on to that real love that is transformative, that is healing. I have so much, as a trans woman, I have had so much trauma, being fetishized, being objectified, just growing up feeling unlovable, that I didn't even deserve love, connection, belonging, and feeling like that relationship was deeply healing. And it's from the unlikeliest of sources. I want that healing that happened in my nervous system. That does not mean I needed to stay with him. It does not mean it ended up, it was going to be healthy. But I'm taking, and in that energy, in that post, I want to be in that love, because that love was healing, and that love is transformative. And I feel a deep sense of worthiness now, of connection, belonging, and love. And I don't feel like I need to necessarily get it from a man now. I'm not interested in dating right now. I'm not interested. There's so much love in my life, and I feel worthy of it. And that the healing, and that's not just from him, it's from friends, it's from 25 years of therapy and all kinds of modalities. But that's the tea. That's the truth of my experience. And I will share more if you want.
I would like to offer this, because
Yes.
I don't want the girls whacking us saying we sat here while you set up the story and then we were just quiet about it. But these parts are important. I would like to offer, because also I think some girls have things that are top of mind. So it doesn't feel like we're interjecting, or girls are, a whacking is happening while you're telling the real story of, bitch, I felt love, and girl, and I need to feel that. I think those are spaces we can convene on. If maybe we just kind of went around and shared, whether perspectives that we have shared already, or just how it impacted us, hearing the story and kind of navigating it, front facing folks as trans folks in the community. And then I think that creates space for us to talk about the layers of it with, and hopefully the other folks who are listening, because what I was hit with this week were the trans girls who are in shelters, who were filming videos about Laverne. And I was just like, okay, this is something important where I know you're navigating all these other things, but how is this landing? And I think there's a possibility model conversation and all of that. So if we're good with that, I don't care who goes. I don't need to go first, but I think that cleans the palette.
I think that's a good idea. Dominique, go first.
Human piece of it. I think I am the person on the out of all of us, I'm the closest to age of Laverne. I'm 43, and I think age matters in this conversation. I am also born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska. I've lived in Atlanta for 3 years, and I say right now, I only eat burnt ends at this point in my life, but I loved a baked chicken set until I was about 32. And explicitly only dated white men. And another reason why there were points in, I want to say in Laverne's story, the shitty part of how you put it out there, sis, is that you didn't give us room to hide in nuance. It was just it was back-to-back hits to where I was seeing it because I was like, oh, I get what she's saying, but I couldn't anchor it and bring other folks in it. And I also don't necessarily know if that was, I think there's responsibility, but then I always try to pull back on the responsibility of when I just get to be a human being. But then it's like the life that we live and the life that we have, we know what the edge sword of that. But I was even only dating white men when I was navigating incarceration, literal slavery is it was a thing. And for me, I never received the affirming experience of love that you received. I think for me, it was more of thinking that these relationships would allow me to manifest a wholer version of me, and not having that language, but looking 20 some years of therapy. And I once I did fall in love with a Black man, I fell in love with a Leo. And after surviving that, and
I'm a Leo.
Oh, I'm
Me too.
Why? It is you all season. And Laverne did this on the precipice of Leo season. It was literally hours of peace before it was upon us. But that being said, I feel like the age piece is one important thing of especially this interesting piece of people wanting us to assimilate, especially folks who identify as women, femmes, wanting us to assimilate to the experience of mainstream definition of womanhood, to think that we don't get hit by that. Oh girl, I turned 40 and I'm not married. Oh girl, I'm 45. What's happening? What's going on? I'm successful here, but does my success matter because I don't have love? I don't have the relationship. These things, how that can put you in spaces where you're searching, and you will compromise / see their positives outweigh their negatives when you can finally find someone who you feel like sees you. And so I resonated with that. I think also because you have always been out here, and I've been saying this a lot, Laverne was famous when being Black and famous wasn't even something that really people wanted to be. They just wanted to be famous. Definitely being Black, famous, and trans wasn't like prevalent. And I think the journey of that millennial life of going through and like the definitions of excellence and some of the natural shedding we have to do, because I think I keep seeing people saying she comes from the deep South. How could this possibly ever happen? All these other things. And I'm just like, there's this woman that's been in Hollywood for like 20 years. And what is that journey? And I've said this, I think because of how you exist, and I think a part of it is protection and the way that people kind of take from us. I think a part of it is just how life happened. I feel like people love they love the Barbie doll of Laverne Cox. I don't feel like people really know this. And that's what I said in that video where I was like, this was messy, but I would like to see messy Laverne because I would like to get to know that person. And I don't think until you show mess that you kind of get to look at the edges of mess, or people get to call you on your mess, right? Last but not least, I feel like a part of what I see a lot of girls going through, and it didn't resonate with me because I don't think I've been invested in this. I started my transition in the pandemic at 38. I think the gag is they're like, if Laverne Cox has to make compromises for love, then what does that mean for me? If what people feel like is the most famous platform, she was on the cover of Time, she all the things that the girls can put on their list to aspire to, if she is compromising, what does that mean for me? And I think that's more of a beautiful conversation, not in the compromise part, but in the truth of there's no level of privilege that protects you from the system, especially if you are a person who engages with men, the system of men in general. There's no level of privilege that automatically brings you out of some of the things you've talked about, like even the journey of separating from that person, just the life lessons of it all. Like privilege doesn't bring that to you. And like the human piece. And I feel like people need, I feel like I want you to figure out how you're able to engage with us the way that we were able to be tapped to be here. Next time, sister, upload it to friends only and send it to one of us and say, bitch, look at this. Because I'm just
hold on.
That was just my ask was, even if this was on your mind and you thought this was, hey, this is how I want to tell this story, it's a part of the one woman show, all this thing. I was just like, where was the community piece? Because had that been me, or I was like, I wish she would have pulled this up at Family Feud, and I would have been like, oh no, bitch, don't put that up there. Or don't tell it like that. Because, well, what's your goal? And if the goal was to bring people to the show and learn more and feel the nuance, I feel like that was lost. And I do feel like you deserve to get to tell stories and bring people into experiences, even if they're not perfect or we don't agree with them. I have not talked about the activist piece because I feel like there are other girls who are going to dig into those spaces. But that's a top of mind for me. Please.
We got to get the story right. So Mother did a live and it was shared maybe 1,000 times, but then the celebrity in her clipped it. Mama clipped it and she put Laverne Cox teases dating her MAGA Republican NYPD cop ex-boyfriend, and that went viral. So this wasn't just, oh, it kind of went viral. Mother wanted it to go viral. She, very a la Sydney Sweeney, I have great genes. I'm going to get the girls riled up so you can come to the show.
Did you put that last name on that, Sydney? Because I was about to be like, nah, that's Friary.
Sydney Sweeney, the actress.
The actress.
I'm from Euphoria. From Euphoria,
yeah, and
not
from
the
White
other
Supremacy.
Sydney, not the trans Sydney.
Oh, Sydney Star. Oh, I love Sydney Star too. I'm pro hoe. I love Sydney Star. I'm a hoe. I'm a pro hoe. And speaking of Sydney Star, and I'm gonna help you, Mother Laverne. I'm gonna give you a lifeline. I have fucked many of MAGA men, but I did it for money. So my coochie's a little more ethical than yours. So people have to, they have to let me slide on that one. And what I will say is you have done so much for the community, and you have brought so many women, so many trans people up. So a lot of people need to thank you for, instead of trying to tear you down, they need to thank you. Anyone who's holding up a camera, they owe that to you. I would have been okay. I'm kind of once in a generation talent, but I think a lot of these girls really need to be, building you up, because when we build you up, we build all of us up.
Oh, I thought you were going to read me some more.
Oh, no. Oh, you want me to read you? No, mother. Let me tell you. Mother, let me tell you. If you let me open for you, I will defend you. If you let me open for you on the show, if you sign on to my short film as executive producer, Motherhood, I will defend you down. No, honestly, I will say this. I did date a man who voted for Donald Trump. And like they say, us lying ass trannies don't disclose, these men don't disclose all of their fucked up politics. And so I did date a man who voted for Trump. He is from Atlanta. He's an entrepreneur. He was in his 20s, and he's also Black. He's Black. And not biracial, not Zendaya Black, legitimately Black. Okay? He's from St. Lucia. He likes to bend over and have his hole expanded. And this man exclusively dates trans women, and he is Black. So understand, you're saying that she dated her oppressor. We're all dating our oppressor if you're dating a man. Okay. And this is the type of PR that you'll get once you sign on as executive producer to my short film Motherhood. I'll let you girls have it. Go ahead.
Yes.
I love us.
I love us.
I love us
us.
too, yeah.
Kat, darling.
I have unethical pussy. So I wanted to talk about it very openly because personally, when I saw that video, even without the context, even without the full context, I mean, yes, I did cringe at the white, blue-eyed, 26-year-old MAGA cop aspect, but I also understood immediately what had happened. Mostly because I personally have lived in predominantly conservative communities for most of my life. And I've very rarely been single. In my life at this point, the times that I've been single are more shallow than not. Conservative men love trans women. And I think that is a very interesting piece of the conversation that's constantly missing. And I guess for me, when I was listening to you, I understood that you were getting something from the relationship, and that something was the feeling of love and being embraced. And I get that, because I think the thing that's really interesting about a lot of conservative men, at least from my experience, right? First of all, like the dolls, they also sometimes don't tell people up front, I've never intentionally dated a conservative man. I've never sat out and said, I want to date a conservative man. I may have had political shifts over the years and things like that, but I've never sat down and said, I wanted to date a Republican or a Democrat for that matter. But I get it, because what happens, you meet these men, usually they're a bit more traditional. Usually they want to pursue a relationship in a very particular way. And that feels great, especially when your experience is being fetishized, being othered, being excluded, being erased, being dismissed. And I think the piece of the conversation that I have often struggled with is, um, first of all, I think all men are more likely than not problematic. I think my attraction to men is truly an illness that I don't want to solve. But long story short, it's very rare that I've dated a man who didn't have some sort of patriarchy, some sort of bullshit. And it didn't matter whether or not this guy was left or right. I found that sometimes these men still treated you the same. I think men on the left are a little bit more aware of it, and so they hide it a little bit better. Um, Men on the right, I think, they can fall back on their politics and say that it's because of their political beliefs, but like, men in general aren't great, right? And I think it's hard to be like, oh, I'm only going to date left leaning men if you don't have that experience from left leaning men, you know? Um, and I think that that's kind of a really important piece people are missing. And it is aggravating to me a bit because I do think of it as the conversation that we're all having right now about men not being honest about their conservative leanings. Like, there's a whole conversation happening right now on the internet about decentering men. And so much of that centers around the fact that conservative men tend to hide their politics, you know? So it was not surprising to me when I got the additional context that that he didn't tell you his politics up front, because, I was dating a guy for a bit, not a year. We didn't make a year. Conservative men don't usually make it that far with me at this point in my life, but I dated him for a bit and I was falling in love. This guy took me places. He wasn't ashamed to be seen with me. He did all the things I expected. And right at the moment I was falling in love with him, he told me he was a Republican,
Mm.
and that's always been my experience. And I kind of wish more people understood just how common conservative men were in our dating pools. Like, we can choose to not respond to them. And personally, I do believe that, and this is maybe just where I've adjusted to, because unfortunately, like I said, I've had a very unethical pussy. Moving forward with ethics in mind, I have adjusted to the mindset of I only share my body with men who are willing to politically defend it. I don't share my body privately with men who can't claim it publicly. And I find that a lot of times as trans women, we sometimes have to kind of go through these weird experiences, and know what we want. Like, nowadays conservative men figure out pretty quickly what my politics are, because I'm very open about my politics and I have that conversation up front, because I've dated enough conservative men. I've felt the love from conservative men and then realized that I wasn't willing to sort of sit there and accept it, because I knew that the other side of it was them making a very small space for me, but discarding basically everyone else. Because that was my experience with conservative men. I'm kind of curious if it was yours. A lot of conservative men that I've dated have been very, oh, you're one of the good ones, basically. Like, you pass, you're pretty, you're this, you're that. You don't, I would hear them have these like opinions about other trans people. And something I've definitely noticed since I've been dating leftist men exclusively is they don't say that shit. A lot of, not to say leftist men can't be transphobic, but there was a hyper fixation and focus of like policing other people's genders that I found to be really abusive ultimately. I mean, long term, something I say, I wrote about this on my website. Something I say is that, long term, these conservatives are all about roses and chocolates at first, but then they start needling you about that. They start needling you about whether or not you actually deserve the roses, whether or not you should really have that extra piece of chocolate. You're getting kind of fat, that sort of stuff. It's nice at first, and then it changes. So I'm a bit curious about that, actually. Like, what kind of arguments did y'all have? Because, I know that I've had a lot of arguments with conservative men about this. I know that even if it's obvious that 1+1 = 2, you'd vote for Trump, who is supporting internment camps and da 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 da. You are naturally voting for someone who is against my rights. There's a dissonance that a lot of these men have. They really don't believe that they're supporting something damaging, even if it is objectively that. So I'm a bit curious about your experience with that a little bit.
Hope hasn't spoken.
Thank you, Sean.
I think we should let Hope speak, and then I can address that.
And yeah, Hope and then
Totally,
Lay.
totally. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hope, go.
I've intentionally not said anything, and I've gotten so many inboxes like, girl, so you really gonna let this slide? And a lot of it is because whenever I say things, Hope is a bully, Hope is a bitch, Hope is a hater, Hope just wants to be Laverne, Hope is mad that it's not her. And, you know, like, I didn't have the
Mm.
energy to go through all of that. And so when Olay presented this, I was like, okay, she's here. So then at least if I'm gonna be all of those things, y'all get to watch the person, feel how she's gonna feel about it, and then make your decisions from that. So I want to say that. Me not saying anything about this has been very intentional. But with that being said, like just to keep it 100, like Laverne, you too old, right? And not old in the sense of like you've been around, to Dominique's point, longer than everybody here. And so there was a live that you did after this where it was like, oh, you know, like maybe I was naive. And I hate to say it, but I have very little tolerance for adults who say things like, oh, I was naive around things. And especially when it comes down to your politic. Like one of my greatest inspirations around you, Laverne, is your politic, is your ability to dig into the governance, is your ability to know what the is going on in the world, right? When Quay said everybody needs to thank you, everybody who picks up a camera needs to thank you. Hey, one of those people right here. So when I look at this person who I see as this strong, smart, if she don't know nothing else, this lady knows politics and understands how this shit works. And whether I always agree or whether I'm always going to lean the way that she's going to lean about it, I know that Laverne has made an educated decision, even if it's not the decision I would have made. And so I really struggle with giving too much grace on this because when it comes down to it, I think about the fact that if you look around, right, to quote Kerry Washington, open up your pretty brown eyes and look the hell around, like you'll see that of all people in this particular moment, we, us, Black trans women, Black women as a whole, don't have the liberty to, without good reason, give people any more ammunition to treat us like tertiary citizens. It's one of the biggest voices. No, well, no. Between you and Madison, y'all going blow for blow on the blowhorn, right? So, as one of the biggest voices for the community, when I look up and I see not only this story, but the image that follows the story, I don't think that it's just about the MAGA thing. As a person who dishes out information and needs people to feel a certain way about this information because I already know that there's a perception of me, I know that had you got on there and you said, hey, y'all, let me tell y'all about fucked up choice or a thing that happened to me a couple of years ago that I never thought I would be in. I never thought I would be in love with a MAGA supporter. But if you come to my show, you'll figure it out. I still want to know the tea. But I'm not pissed that it happened because now I'm intrigued about where you're going from. Now I feel like you're inviting me in. To Dominique's earlier point, that feels like the type of mess that I want to be invited into because it feels like there's accountability. It feels like there's about to be atonement. It feels like there's growth and learning coming from delivery in that way. What you said and did, Laverne, felt like. And like you admitted, you were coming from a place of love because you were in the middle of rehearsal. When you bring that shit to us and you sit around and you say, oh, the blonde hair, blue eyes, he was so hot, he was this, he was that. I don't give a fuck that this man was hot. Because this man has actively voted against you, against me, against everybody that looks like us. It's not just a trans thing. He voted against Black women. He voted against the Black men that are dying and being killed in the streets. He voted against Black children that had to go up against these KKK motherfuckers. He voted against that. And also, it wasn't enough for him. We sit back and we say these things. You sat back and said these things to white supremacists on CNN, on MSNBC, on the places that you have the privilege to sit and tell these motherfuckers about themselves as the Black trans woman in politics. You've told these people racism wasn't enough, and that is the problem. So when you laid with this man, racism wasn't enough for him. When you laid with that man, genocide wasn't enough for him. When you lay with that man, Trump being a racist wasn't enough for him. And you continue to lay with that man. And that says to other people that, again, if Laverne Cox got to settle, then what hope do I have as the girl who's fresh on hormones and can't keep them consistent? As the girl who everybody is talking every day in and out? As the girl who doesn't have the money to get the wig or the shoe or the dress or the this or the that? I can't formulate a sentence good enough for people to want to make my video go viral. People are going to say I sound stupid. I'm worried about not being intelligent enough. And Laverne got a that voted against her best interests? Baby, I'm shit out of luck. I might as well go ahead and just take what I can get. Some of these girls literally are on the threads because I ain't on Twitter no more. Some of the girls are on threads saying this in so many words. Like, well, shit, what hope do we have? Because if the
Mm.
beautiful, if the famous, if the inextricably intelligent Laverne has to settle for this, then I might as well lay down. I felt like in a time like this, there were so many other ways. I'm sure that there were so many other salacious and tea-filled stories that could have been the point of virality. To Quay's point, that was a whole live video. And you could have flipped anything. You are, if I don't think about, when I think about visionaries and people who like pull the things out and create the space, you're that person. And creating a space that says to people, one, whether it's true or not, will value white men over black men, because that's the thing that nobody's really talking about, which a lot of girls are pissed off about. Two, I
I'm
did
sorry.
not.
Can you clarify that? This perception that I value white men over black men. I just want to make sure that I'm hearing that
Absolutely.
correctly.
I think
Okay,
one of it
go on.
is one of those things, just to like quickly, because I don't want anybody to be lost on that. I think that one of those things for a lot of people is that by design, we don't know your business, right? So you might have had 100,000 black boyfriends, but we've only seen the one. And I think the thing that most people won't say is that when we talk about blackness in a microcosm, there's different sectors of blackness, and the way that each and every one of us wear that blackness is different. And I think that a lot of people would assume that a black woman who wears her blackness like you don't like black men. So when you come out with a white man, when you come out and you say this, it affirms those assumptions because people don't know you. They can't get close enough to know you. And then two, it makes black men who are also of the mind that a lot of black trans women don't want a black man because they feel like we only find safety in white men to start to feel the same way. And that makes them even more violent than they already are. That's not our. I'm saying that those are things that like attribute to the system. I'm gonna land the plane because I do want other people to talk, but I think that when it comes down to the backlash, even afterwards, right? You made the rebuttal video to do your clarification after you saw what was happening with it, and then directly after, there was a post from a gay man who also seems like the type of black that would not date a black man, who's talking about how black women should decenter dating men. That did not like to me it felt like tone deaf decision after tone deaf decision after tone deaf decision. That, and I don't want to put words in Dominique's mouth, but I think that all of the language that she used earlier was just to really say, if you had some Keishas, some sisters, some Hopes, some Dominiques, some Ratchets in your life, they would have been like, bitch, absolutely the fuck not. Absolutely the fuck
She
not.
does. She does.
Hold on.
Go ahead. Get it, Jade. Go ahead. Get it, Jade.
I think that, well, bitch, I'm here. So I think that
Say it. We need to say it.
because of
Say it for everybody watching.
like in
We need to
regards
say it
to
for everybody watching. We need to speak for
differential
the
conversation
people.
in the people, I think the black trans women who are around Laverne have such a desire to have such a respect for her or see themselves as wanting to be in, or she is an aspirational patronus to where I don't believe they are having that accountability conversation and or they are navigating things in the same. I'm just telling you or they're navigating things in the same way. And I may be making assumptions about who Peppermint might hunch on, but I will perceive that she will be a white man before a black man. And every time I see a girl choose to engage with a white man in a scripted world, I'm always like, if you don't want to choose in real life, when you could choose in pretend life and it's not there, that's where I feel like a lot of the girls are putting. I also feel like the girls are putting things on you that isn't necessarily fair. And what I mean by that is, in what I heard, because I really had to sit and listen to the whole, because immediately I was triggered because of my own shit, where we will feel like, well, that's not my problem. I didn't say I was this. I didn't say I was that. My pussy is going to change. Who is in the office? Who I love? Don't I have the right to have my own life? Don't I have the right to exist? Don't I have the right? And I feel like people, that circle piece, if the circle is there, I think expanding the circle in whatever way feels good for you. I think that's important. I called Madison and I was like, we just saw that lady like a month ago. Why did this lady say nothing? I wish she would have like played this in that damn trailer, right? Our Family Feud episode, I think, comes out tomorrow. Praise the Lord. And there's that, but also I think that I'm gonna say this. I love the conversations that are being had about MAGA white men, but the that we all lay with, that are the who are throwing girls in dumpsters and cutting them and putting them in pieces, the activist girls who I will see bring the woogie trade to the National Trans March while you are passing out pamphlets. I think that I wish the conversation of who we love and the messiness of it, yes, the epicenter is around whiteness, and that journey, as Hope said, I think that's real. But I got frustrated when people didn't want to expand it to, if I lay with somebody from the hood, although he's not a MAGA supporter, well, what is MAGA for Black men who don't really understand the systems of power to kind of ascend to that title, but also believes exists in the same way? We'll talk about me being the trans girl where it's like, oh, you talk well, you don't do this, that, you don't sell your ass, but I'm seeing you shooting content with Drea on Twitter. You have no problem with, it's those conversations. And I think that I also feel like the conversation of there's old and age, and I think people make assumption of experience when it comes to interpersonal relationships. As a sex educator, as like, I think that's something that I also recognize. Your the Disney princess voice in that conversation that you had, Laverne, didn't bother me as much, and I will say why it didn't. I was like, this sounds like how you, even though you should not be with this person, you've deluded. There's delusion there, but there's the right to be able to look back on something that everyone else is like, bitch, you're ridiculous. This is a fool. And you're just like, bitch, but I loved him, because I went on TikTok and I said, I done told y'all the story about the big dick Leo who wore me out and was stressing me through, and bitch, my wigs were shedding. He had me so stressed out, and I loved him. And y'all in the comments going up, they're comparable. And for me, there's a story of, well, Dominique White, I was running Black and Pink. I was liberating girls every day. I was on the cover of Apple, and this was putting holes in the wall, and I was having to mute videos. And that's the conversation that I hope we keep having, is the compromise that the most intelligent, most accomplished women, be them cis or trans, are experiencing when it comes to love needs to be studied, because we can have everything else. And I think the question I keep coming to is if we can have it all. And I think it's not, I don't have a definitive answer, but at 43, I'm like, do I choose to stand by my values, not lay next to a man who's going to betray, or whether they are Black, white, or in between? Does that mean that I might have to be alone? I think that's another reason why you're seeing a lot of those are questions I'm asking myself. These are questions I'm asking myself, and I'm fighting for love and I'm fighting for relationship because we have possibility models. Hope has a husband. Like we're seeing people in relationships. I'm not saying that.
That's
I'm
Kat
saying
has a few partners.
ebb and flow,
Oh, God bless.
because everyone thinks there's a sustained moment of you feeling. I'm going to use the term weak, not in a bad way, but where you have this weakness where you lean into a choice that's not good for you. It's that split second, bitch, at 3 a.m. when you like, I'm tired. I've been the good. And this isn't to assuage. This was me last night. This was me saying, "Oh, bitch, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, girl, and I really want these titties sucked on, and I know this is terrible, but you know what? No." And then you're trying to figure out, well, and then the next day, what does this mean for me? Am I really who I say I am? And all those other things. And so I'm just saying this because everyone has said the way people, you should have kept that, Dominique. You want to make excuses for Laverne. We also, I don't believe in a version of accountability that exists for people who you can't reach out and have conversations with. And I think people are using that word too flippantly. It's like, we need to hold Laverne accountable. How? Because what she just said, I said, Laverne has put down her phone at this point, and she's somewhere twirling in her closet.
Okay.
She'll know what.
May I just say one thing? The only thing I want to say, the only thing I want to say is that I have a certain inner circle of trans girlfriends who I didn't reach out to I didn't reach out to my management. My management, no one really in my life was like happy with the way I roll that out. But and you mentioned peppermint read me. Peppermint read. I hope she won't mind me saying this because it happened. We were together last 2 nights ago after my show, and the night it happened, we got on the phone. She's like, "Girl, what the fuck?" Peppermint read me. My girls read me. I did not consult them, but she read me for a film, and she was like,
"Your girls have been reading you for a while. You mind if I share what happened?" Okay, so this is years back. Yes. I know you've been hopping on the pink meat for a long time, and nowhere on the BDS list are we supposed to boycott pink meat. So I saw that we were at Angelica's house in not Woodland Hills, in wherever, Westwood.
Angelica, where's she at?
Angelica wants no parts because she already said her piece, and I will deliver the message. Laverne said, and you were happy about it. Laverne was like, I'm dating this guy. I got the photos, and she showed us the photos of the man. He is real buff. He does look good. I see why your pussy had to go unethical for a minute. Angelica in that moment said, you were dating your oppressor. And she let all her shit be known. I'm a bitch that wants you to executive produce her short film, Motherhood, where I play the first pregnant trans woman. But so I kept my mouth shut, and I was like, do it, love wins. But Angelica read you, and Angelica let it be known that she was not with it. And this was in 2022. This is before you came to it with the internet and made the one woman show. And so she definitely has that. And speaking of, girls who choose white men in the scripted world, here's me and my white man in our film that Laverne will be executive producing very soon. Take the floor.
I live for you.
I want to make sure Deshawn, and then Laverne, you can.
Yes, darling.
Have it.
I think we're keeping it real. I think we're getting it. We're doing the thing.
100%. 100%. No, I have a lot of thoughts. And I'm gonna try to be as coherent as possible in expressing those thoughts. One thing that I want to say that I feel like has come up a lot in discourse around this past week that I've seen is just that, there's commentary about Black men not wanting to date Black trans women, Black trans folks largely, but Black trans women specifically, or there's commentary about, you know, there not being a difference between MAGA men and you know, as the internet calls them, DL thug trade. The girls don't know what words mean anymore, but there's there's a lot of commentary happening in that way that for me I have really been trying to sit with, and one thing that's coming up for me is there words like settle and compromise have been used a lot, but what I want to be clear about is that there is this. Two things are true. One, I hope that you are able to sit with the fact that you are in fact a victim. You were coerced into a relationship with someone who lied to you about who he was, and that quite literally is the definition of coercion. So, like, just want to name that. But the other thing that I also want to name is that when you found out who this man was or is or whatever, I think the decision to stay with him was not about compromise or settle. It was an active decision that was being made because of desire. And I think like that is the piece that continues to get lost in the conversation around like, well, I don't get to date such and such because such and such.
Can you say more about an active decision about desire? That's
absolutely.
I'm really intrigued by that.
So I wrote this book called Belly of the Beast, and in that book, I write a lot about desire as a structure of that is the book. Desire as a structure, as a sort of global structure that overdetermines the way that the world works. There are different philosophers and theorists who use different language. Like one of my favorite terms is libidinal economy, and what that means is that the libidinal economy functions in a similar way as a political economy, where things are bought, traded, exchanged, that are determined by our attraction, our wants, but also by the things that make us aggressive or that are aggressive, the things that kill us also overdetermine what we desire, what we don't desire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's essentially that it is the methodology through which attraction is determined, and therefore it determines how we show up in the world. And so when I hear people say things like, I dated such and such because this other group of people don't want me, what I actually hear is, I chose someone who I understand to be desirable because the people who I do not desire, I don't want to be in relationship with them, right? And I think that we have to be more honest about that. I think that that's something that we have to actually sit with and be comfortable with naming, because I don't believe, Laverne, that you are an absolutely beautiful woman who does have access, a level of access that many folks do not, right? Who lives a life that many folks aspire to. And when I'm saying folks, I'm saying, I know that this conversation is specific to Black trans women, but I'm also broadening that to Black trans folks more largely, because so many of us aspire to a level of access that we, or I won't say we, that folks have attributed to you, whether or not it's true, right? And so what I don't believe is true is that the only person you were able to receive love from was this New York police officer who is a MAGA Republican that voted for Trump, right? Like I just don't believe that that's true. What I do believe is true.
Why don't you believe that's true? Why don't you believe that's true?
Well, because of desire. I know how desire works, right? I know that there is. we are taught through various social institutions, right? Be it school, media, religion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, what it is that we should want, what it is that we should desire. We are indoctrinated into that before we even know it, before we can even give language to it, right? It is part of the
So
sort
your
of
argument is that their love is available to me if I were able to deconstruct my relationship to what I desire.
well,
That love would be available in a different form if I had a different relationship to desire. I don't want to cut you off, but I just want
I'm
to.
arguing two things. I think that is one thing. What I'm also arguing is that, oops, I'll get to that in a second. Yes, I am saying that desire and not just your desires, right? Like, this is not a personal attack. This is something that I absolutely understand to be structural. That desire overdetermines how we engage the idea of love itself, how we engage the idea
Absolutely.
of relationships. And so,
Yes.
what I know is true is that many people see this thing that is unobtainable for them, this idea of someone who is unattainable for them, or who represents something that they've been taught they should desire, right? This big, I mean, we hear this sort of thing in discourse all the time: tall, buff, or muscular, rich, or has money, or has a level of access, is employed, has a big dick, has like all these things that play a significant role in what we desire, right? That might say, oh, well, I might be more aligned with this person who is none of those things, but I want to be with this. I'm lusting after this person who I may or may not be aligned with because of how they look. We don't even get to a conversation about politics. We don't get to a conversation about.
You can't intellectualize my dick. Like Dominique said, I'm a big dick Leo. My birthday's in August later this month. For all the bottoms listening,
Dominic called you a big dick Leo. I called you a Leo.
Well,
No. You spoke about your big dick Leo. I'm saying I am a big dick Leo. I own it. What I'm saying is I appreciate, Deshaun, what you're saying.
No, I didn't finish though. So I want to finish. Can I finish?
You can intellectualize what you love.
Can I finish?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Maybe we should let Deshaun finish. Maybe we should let Deshaun
I know it was
finish.
a round robin. I'm sorry. I thought it was I did Olay and Friends before. We sort of just kind of jump in and jump out.
Well, sure.
I think Deshaun should finish this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I am going to intellectualize your dick and everyone else's because that is what is real about the world. And so I'm not going to like downplay that, right? Desire is just as real of a structure as anti-Blackness. It's just as real of a structure as cis sexism, and it overdetermines how we navigate the world and how we experience the world. I'm not going to, pretend like that's not true. So what I am saying is that because of how we desire and what we desire, it plays a significant role in who we see as lovable or capable of giving us love. And that overdetermines how we experience the world, right? That is just bottom line true. A lot of trans folks don't want to date other trans folks. A lot of folks don't want to date fat folks. A lot of folks don't want to date dark-skinned folks. A lot of folks don't want to date, disabled folks. Like the list goes on and on and on and on and on. That is very true for what people desire and do not desire. So what I'm saying is that it is quite possible that you never arrived to a conversation about this person's politics because what you saw was enough for you to not even have to consider that, to not even arrive to a conversation about his politics because you desired him, because he was this blonde, blue-eyed white man who represented something that you wanted. And what is also true is that for many of us, we are indoctrinated into wanting things that we should not have, or that we know represent our oppressors. That is just bottom line true. It's why we continue to have conversations.
May I just respond? May I respond to that?
Sure.
Just because I love what you're saying, and I agree about your assertion about desirability. What I will say about my my ex, I would like to distinguish between desirability and attraction. So over the years, I have, in an effort to be very open to, for me, it's been about the way I'm treated. I'm 53 years old. I've been treated very badly by men of all races, short, tall, and I'm in New York City. I've gone out with, I'm the United Nations of Trade. I have got, what ethnicity, nationality, I've done them all. And so I've been open. And then when things were really not going well, I was like, let me expand who I am dating and try to for better treatment. So I've gone out with a lot, I've expanded, like a lot of short guys. I mean, like, Black men have been on but a lot of it is about treatment. For me, first and foremost, how are they treating me? How are they treating me? And so for a while, I went out with guys that I wasn't necessarily attracted to, but they treated me well. And so I was like,
why would you do that?
Can you define what treated? Can you define what treated me well feels like?
May I? When I say they treated me well, they showed up consistently.
Okay.
They were respectful. The disappearing, the go away, come closer stuff. They spoke. There was a consistency in the communication. There was a respect. I didn't feel objectified. I felt respected.
Okay.
I felt like treated like a human being. There are a lot of men who don't do that.
Absolutely.
So we're not saying these are bullshit. Every time we see a black trans woman is killed, it's one of these black men. I'm telling you, I'm telling you the real shit. Turn up the volume. Go ahead, mama. Go ahead.
May I finish? So I expanded who I was, I was like, I'm not necessarily attracted, but let me be open. And what it came down to for me is with the nice, nerdy, sweet guy, is I didn't want to have sex with him. I don't think that I should have sex with someone that I'm not attracted to. And I don't think that's a service to me or to anyone else. And I'm attracted to a plethora of, like, I've had sex with it's not a race thing. So I've had sex with men of all races that I was attracted to. And it was giving and it was lovely.
They are social creatures and biological creatures.
Just because I have access, most of us trans women, we have access to sex, but the sex with good treatment, with love attached to it, that's a whole other story. So for me, to conclude with my most recent ex, I've been with a lot of hot men, and they didn't treat me well. They didn't last. I don't care. I mean, attraction is important, but it's not everything. If a man is fine, and there have been many fine men who have come across in my life who have not been who've been treating me like shit, and they were gone. They were gone.
I think to what I'm gonna go back to being a fly on the wall in a second, and I'll hand this off to Hope and then Quay and let Deshaun respond. Just as somebody that's like literally knee deep in all of Deshaun's work, I think to what you're saying, Quay, like, attraction or whatever it is, biological, all these different things. I think what Deshaun is trying to speak to is that our attraction, like who we are attracted to, is socioculturally determined. Like, though we think it's that. This is who I like, this is who I think is attractive, whatever, we are told and painted and conditioned into what we think is attractive. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's not that Deshaun is trying to say that we should sleep with people that we or consider people that we are not attracted to. What Deshaun is saying is that in general, we are very motivated by desire and attraction. We put that above most things. We go based on that, and that in and of itself is socioculturally determined to be all these things. So even though you might not, it's not about whether or not you yourself recognize is like, okay, I desire whiteness or blah, blah, or it's not saying that you've never liked anybody else or you're not attracted to anyone else, or that there can't be people that in some way deviate from this beauty standard and all that, and you still fuck with them. Generally, there is a padding, there is a benefit, there is a positive lookism that comes with somebody embodying, you think they're hot. This white, blonde hair, blue eye.
I agree with all that.
That's all I was saying. Like, that's my clarification of what Deshaun was saying. You see me reading?
I don't disagree with that, Deshaun. I don't disagree with any of that.
Was saying something.
I just want to clarify.
Deshaun was saying something I wanted to hear more about, though. Like, Deshaun said that, but I felt like there was a moment, Deshaun, when you were talking about, you were just like, you can't believe that Laverne, it was something like it felt like there was a reflection around her desirability, positioning her to have more access. It felt like something was brimming there. Maybe I was wrong, but I want to, if that was coming forth, I would like to hear that full statement in reflection to how you posed the theory with the other piece.
I'm sorry, Dominique. I could only hear the last half of what you just said. Can you say that first part again?
Sorry. So when you were talking about the desirability, that the theory piece there,
Mhm.
there was a moment that it felt like you were.
I think you're referring to the moment when Deshaun said that Deshaun doesn't feel like Deshaun doesn't believe that I didn't have other options of
Well,
people who would love
that's
me and
how
treat me well.
I'm
Is that
assuming
correct?
it. That's how I'm assuming it, but I want to hear, because after I heard the further part of their explanation, that the way that landed for me doesn't align with the way you explained the theory in the end around desirability. So I would love for you to either reiterate it, or because we've been jumping in and stuff, to pull that out. No, because
It's a free flowing conversation. We don't have to do round robin.
we're all, what I'm seeing in reflection is all of us, that feels like something that we can jump in and say what we have to say, and that holds space. I don't know if I don't want to lose this, because I think a lot of people have the
I
assumption.
think it's lost. I think it's lost.
Don't want to lose. I don't want to lose it, because what I've seen repeatedly said is Laverne can get anybody, and I think there's a difference between someone seeing you as fuckable and someone seeing you as lovable.
Absolutely.
And so I
Yes.
don't lose that, and I want to hear if from this theory and from this body of work, I would love to either hear what was missed, or make sure that we got the appropriate. It landed the way it was supposed to land in this space of theory.
Okay. I'm Kanye. I'm gonna let you finish. Go ahead, Deshaun.
What? Can you tell me how to pronounce your name?
Quay.
Quay.
Like the Quaalude, the
Quay.
drug.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Dominic, to your question and to the chat from Kat, I am not saying that Laverne has many options because of her access to wealth. That actually is not at all what I'm saying. What I am saying is that Laverne is light skinned. Laverne is quote unquote, I hate this term, but Laverne is quote unquote passing. Laverne does have wealth or access to wealth. Laverne is thin. Like there are all these things that play a significant role in what people desire. And so what I'm saying is whether or not you understood yourself to have more options than this singular New York police officer who was a MAGA Republican, there were other options that I believe was not considered because of whatever reason that might be, right? And these are people that we don't even think about as people that we should or should not consider. You just named, right? I don't want to have sex with people that I don't desire. I'm not saying that you should. I'm saying, in fact, that people who you are not attractive to, or not attracted to, there's probably an underlying reason as to why that is true. This socio-political indoctrination that happens that determines who we are and are not attracted to. That's what I'm speaking to specifically.
Absolutely. Do you believe that can be changed, Deshaun? Do you think that that there's a decolonization of desirability that can happen so that we can somehow change who we are attracted to? Is that your contention?
I actually don't really. Whether or not it can be changed is not something that I care to like wrestle with. What I care to wrestle with is whether or not we're willing to acknowledge it, right? I think
I'm willing to acknowledge it.
Right. And I believe that you are. What I'm saying is that generally many people are not invested in acknowledging this as true, right? Where we want to believe that our desires are fixed, that they are quote unquote biological, that they are something that is just true, and not something that is a socio-political phenomenon in the same ways that everything else is, right? We know that race is a social construct. We know that gender is a social construct. We know that all these things are socially constructed in a way for people to exist over and against others, right? That white exists over and against black, right? That cis exists over and against trans, that het exists over and against queer. We know that to be true. I'm not saying that any of this means that those men will want to respect or treat you well or not objectify you. In fact, I'm saying that what is true is sort of to Dominique's point, is that dating men in general is an outright dismissal of how do I want to put this? I want to make sure I frame this in a way that people are going to say what they want to say regardless. Dating men is absolutely a commitment to being with your oppressor. That is just true. Quay, what is your issue? I'm sorry. What's tea?
Deshaun, I just want to offer, and I won't hope to go. Deshaun, it's only a 2-hour show, and so brevity can sometimes help, so everybody can jump in. I want to hear Kat. I want to hear everybody.
Well, I waited an hour before I ever said a word. I waited an hour before I said a word. So I'm sorry that you feel like I'm not being brief.
It's not about a feel. It's just I do.
It is about a feel though, and I don't really appreciate the like this. I don't want to do that. We came here to have a conversation, so we can have a conversation. Or
you can leave me a review on Yelp.
I don't know you, boo. Like, why are you like? What's the energy? I don't know you. I don't know you at all.
So I think what
Olay,
is
come in. Olay, handle it. Olay.
I love everybody here. I love you all. I particularly, Deshaun is my baby. Quay, I love you. I will hate to have to jump in here over my baby being. I'm like,
I don't think that's necessary.
Deshaun takes the time to explain because, in fairness, to Deshaun,
around. I think what we're also seeing, and I want to name, and then I think we can make quick pivots, is that, and the reason I asked Deshaun to re-explain them, not re-explain, to elaborate, is because what we're also seeing is that under the trans umbrella, there are varied experiences based on your identities under the trans umbrella. And those varied experiences, our theory, our work, our experiences around love are not, none of them are less important than the other, but this is very clearly, I think the tension with Quay and that we're seeing is.
I don't like tension.
Will you let me finish, please?
Yes, Mama. Go ahead.
What is being considered as tension, because Olay is coming on camera and off mute, is that a lot of people struggle with theory versus how it feels in action and in life. And so these conversations are being had. And so I asked about that desirability piece because the theory and that conversation, I've read your work, I love your work, and so I see that, and I fell in love with your work pre-transition. And I will tell you, what if Laverne had a 5 o'clock shadow, she would have a better chance of finding a husband in the hood. And what I mean is, what I often see is the further that women go along their journey and their transition, which often actualizes security and fullness and wholeness of self. With men in general, it's a struggle because men often don't want women who feel like they have a complete understanding of self. Also, what I see oftentimes, if you're a person who is engaged with cis men, as someone who does not have SRS, but the conversations I've had with my sisters, is that once you got a flower, it's a different journey as well with the boys and the conversations. And I think, and I'm interested in this desirability conversation in regards to how, Laverne, I think you can address, as someone who spent my whole life, literally, I would not talk to Black men. I would not. It wasn't a happenstance. It wasn't, I was rich. It wasn't, I'm talking about, it was deep in me. And I believe it was all based on just desirability. And I had to sit down and I had to have conversations with myself. And I think that if you go into a space with someone and ask these questions and have someone who will be in it with you in a space that's safe for you, because I don't think this is something that should have to play out in front of people in any way, shape, or form. But I believe the shift can happen. And my truth is I found my lack of engaging with Black men to reflect my Blackness, not really having an experience around my Blackness based on where I grew up. It's one of the reasons I moved to Atlanta. I wanted so many Black men around. Bitch, if I'm choosing a white man in Atlanta, that's a stern choice at this point. That's something I had to do, right?
It's true.
But I think Quay and I know Hope is ready. I just wanted to say, like, what the trans folks who are going to watch this, I want us to be better. I would love for us to be better about talking about the varied experiences with under the trans umbrella that doesn't negate the umbrella and the validity of people's transness, because I think there's a lot of girls who are going to hear something and be like, what does this mean? And I wanted Deshaun to explain it further, because I believe that needed to be
And what
heard.
does this mean for our lives,
She just-
right? I
and
think that, I mean, a lot of trans folks, people of all, you know, gender identities felt sort of betrayed by my post. And, you know, I don't know how to address that. I can just, you know, sort of tell my truth. But I do think, like, what is, like, it's because ultimately this has to be bigger than Laverne, right? I think what
Absolutely.
I think is beautiful is that there's a conversation about, like, how we desire, who desires us. I mean, we know statistically, right? Pornhub releases all their stats every year. It's red states that source the most trans porn. We have the data, and then most of us have the empirical lived experiences that, like, conservative men are checking for us a lot. So then how does that play out in our lives around, I think, like, just navigating relationships? I think for me, I think there's, like, where we grew up, childhood trauma, replicating that, like replicating, like, experiences that we saw in our household and thinking that that's love when it's not. How do we, like, really value ourselves? And I think that it becomes a bigger question. There is a political piece that Holt spoke to. There's so many things, but, like, the takeaway for the trans folks listening becomes a question for me, that it's bigger than, like, you know, Laverne, but it's, like, about us as a community. I think is important to
So my takeaway, my
address.
point there in naming this.
Can we let Hope jump in?
Can you
She
stop
just unmuted.
interrupting me though? Like, I just, like, this energy is really crazy. I'm sorry, Olay. Like, I can't do that. I can't.
Okay, go. I'm sorry.
The energy is
I'll
crazy.
go mute. I'm so sorry. I'm the villain. It's okay. I'm the trans villain.
Please, Hope. Hope.
Come on now. Like, what is, like? Go ahead, Hope. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Hope. I'm feeling emotions from Hope. Talk to us, Hope.
Because as a woman who is married to an amazing Black man who loves my dirty draws, who doesn't mind being seen with me in public, who never has, those were boundaries. And this is not a thing that I'm saying for now. If you followed me long enough, you heard me say that this body is a no trade zone since I've been a sophomore in college. And that was because I made a certain decision after having a negative experience with a DL boy, you know, in my dorm room. I was like, oh, this how y'all gonna treat me for the next 4 years? Oh, absolutely the not. Like, oh, no, I don't want to do this. And so now I'm only going to be with people, even if that means I am going to be with a man who identifies himself as gay. I would rather do that and be willing to be with somebody who's willing to be seen with me, who understands me, who respects me to a degree, than to be with somebody who only sees me as worth being shoved in a pillow after basketball practice. Like, I can't do that. And I think that when we talk about the choices that are being made, I look at this system and I think that, and not to put words in your mouth, Deshaun, but I think that the thing that we're skating around and not just saying, and I think Laverne has given us space to just say it, is that most people believe that, Laverne, you don't like Black men. And that you don't like Black men because there's a desire to, in the same way that Black men who date white women want to ascribe to an adjacency to the power that those white men have, that there's also a power that Black men who date white men also ascend to, and there's an adjacency to white womanhood in the way that white women are treated, that I think a lot of people assume that you want. I think in getting to know you a little bit better, like, because I don't know you like that.
Can I address that when you finish? Can I address that?
Absolutely. I think in getting to know you a little bit better, because I still don't know you like that, I know that that's not true. However, from the outside looking in, before I started to be able to DM you and have a little bit more access to you, I understand that it's really not the adjacency to whiteness. There is a preference. There is, or not there is, there feels like now it's not this adjacency to whiteness. I feel like you just got a preference. Everybody has preferences. Everybody has, to Deshaun's point, desires. And I think that as a public group of people who don't have internal access to you and how you feel, the assumption is that your preference, your desire does not involve Black men. And that the scapegoat for that is, well, Black men do this, Black men do that, and Black men don't typically do this in this particular way, and so I'm not going to. And I think that for me, the reason why that is an issue is because as the possibility model, whether you like it or not, right? Whether you signed up for it or not, we know that you are an actress. We know that you did not sign up to be anybody's role model of the day. But at the end of the day, your access, your visibility, all of the things that you have become have made you the possibility model. And when the possibility model starts to shift away from the ideation of Black love and possibility for a Black trans woman to do that, when we already have the gay boys, RuPaul, and I love him to death, but Todrick, and all of these other boys that every single time they get an ounce of a piece of fame and wealth and access, it's never a Black man. And we're starting to see that trickle through the rest of the community. And so when we see our Laverne, when we see our Lady Liberty, kind of sort of continuing this narrative that if you're Black and queer and you make it, that the person on your arm to keep you there has to be white, it sends a message to our young girls that make them feel like Blackness is not safe for them, that Black love is not safe for them, that being around Black men and in space with Black men is not safe for them unless you are collecting a coin. You are willing to accept toxicity. You are willing to accept being dimmed down. And that's not the truth, right? And while that might not be the thing that we all see um, in these huge mass examples, it happens. And it just, I think that like
Absolutely. May I?
you carry a weight that I don't think is fair, but I think you have to be
Yeah.
conscious of it.
Yeah. I thank you for that. I appreciate that. Wow. I there's like so much of my I've had a lot of moments when I've thought about my like romantic life and like not wanting to have that politicized. And so that's a lot of the reasons why I haven't, been, you know, on social media with my boy with, who I'm dating. But I don't that is not how I feel. I'm not against dating. I've never been against dating Black men. The first man I ever had sex with was a Black man from Mobile, Alabama. I've in New York I mean, when you move to New York and there's just so many beautiful men of all races, in the 90s and 2000s, I've I've had a lot of sex with Black men. I've had a lot of sex with, Latino men. The beautiful Puerto Rican,
I
Dominican
want to
men here
move
in New
away from
York.
sex. It's not
Oh,
about,
you've been
But my point is,
yeah.
I guess my point is, I am open. I am open. I've gone on dates with men of all. I'm open. For me, I feel like I can't close down my options as a Black trans woman. I am open. But it's about the way I'm treated across the board. Any race, I have to be attracted to you first, and I'm attracted to many Black men. There's so many Black men I would love if they like check for me, but they don't. I'm open, but I can't make somebody want me, and I'm not going to accept treatment that is less than what I deserve from any man of any race.
Yeah.
And that's period, point blank. And so I get that the fantasy, I wish that I could give you the Laverne Cox Black King, I would love that. If he came along, if he's listening and watching, and maybe he comes correctly, like, let's see. Well, I'm not ready to date yet, but like maybe in a year or so. But like, I'm open to that. And I've seen those criticisms. I see that people assume I only want a white man. I've seen the criticisms. And when I went public with my boyfriend before, the MAGA guy, people were gagging and upset, and I get it and I understand, but it's
because
like,
the boyfriend before is white as well. And
absolutely.
then there was another
Absolutely.
white one as
There have
well.
been the men who I've been in long-term relationships with have been white men. I've had long-term situationships with Black men. But
Why
they
are they
weren't
situationships?
they
They
weren't
don't want you.
they weren't claiming me. And I'm not saying, and I'm not going to make a blanket generalization about Black men. I'm not making that generalization.
In our
We see hope.
experience.
We see hope there are black trans women with black men. I don't want to make that blanket generalization. Just in my experience,
The
and what
exception doesn't prove the rule.
Yeah. And can I say something about this? Because it's something that people come at me all the time, because also the only time I've shown my partners, they've been white men. It's, it aggravates me because I also would love to bring the Black love experience. And Hope, I loved your shoot that you did for your
it's
wedding.
beautiful.
That
It's
was so
beautiful.
beautiful and, like, honestly, very, very inspiring. What's frustrating, I think, from my vantage point, and I think Laverne also has similar experiences, is when you're open to everyone, and the Black men you have dated, not a statement about all, but the Black men that you have dated or attempted to date, don't want to go out with you, don't want to claim you, aren't particularly interested in a long-term relationship, and you're not having the mentality of, I need to specifically seek out Black men. I need to specifically pursue Black men. The natural thing is it's always going to end up being someone who isn't Black. um in my experience from and my situation, I've lived outside of the ability to actually interact a lot with Black men. It's mostly my environment. LA's the only place I've really lived where I have actual consistent access. So when I moved out here, I made a lot of effort to specifically connect with Black men. And time again, it was this thing where I felt like they didn't value me. Um, I would have plans for dates. They would cancel the date or say that they were busy. Then I'd get a text from them, at midnight, like, "Hey, can I stop over and say hello?" You know, and
White men do this too, but go on.
Mhm.
Men of
And
all races do this, but go on.
men of all races do this. Men of all races have hesitation around trans women. But I think what ends up happening is white men have more social privilege, more societal privilege. That's probably why you're even able to have a situation where a white MAGA cop dude can confidently and openly date a trans woman, even if it, to some people, conflicts rather with his politics. Because from what I've felt from Black men, and this is just from me seeing them also interact with other people, Black men make me feel like going on a date in public with me would like ruin their life, like literally would ruin their life. And it's not all
And
Black
it probably
men,
would.
and it might, Whereas the white partners I've dated, there was a time in my life where I dated some people who weren't super confident about me. But at this phase of my life, I'm only dating men who want to take me out. I'm only dating men who sit with me in public. And the men who get there are usually white men. And it is this thing where, for me personally, when I meet a white man, I have the political conversation immediately, because I feel like white men are more likely to have bad politics than men of color. But it sort of ends up being this thing of, in my situation, do I want to commit to only dating Black men and not date everyone the way that, I'm from Southern California. I know most people I know are in interracial relationships. It's not that uncommon. Do I want to do that, or do I want to continuously pursue Black men exclusively just so I could have that representation? Um, I am pretty determined not to stop dating or trying to date Black men, because I feel like my experience is like, I just have it's my environment more than anything. Because what's interesting is when I go out with my partners, my white partners, I will always get the
She's
most
polyamorous,
loving.
by the way, just
Oh
so
yeah, I'm
for people who don't
polyamorous. I
know.
have 4 boyfriends. Sorry. Not all of them are white. But when I go out with my white partners, it's like that's the only time I really experience Black men saying something overtly positive and friendly to me in public. It's a very
Hmm.
weird thing where they'll
Hmm.
turn to him, they'll pat him on the back. And I just wish that those men would also pursue me, because that's not the experience I have from a lot of Black men, being proud to be seen with me, being proud to go out with me. like at all. And I don't want to speak for Laverne, but I obviously, I think we identify in very similar ways about a lot of things. And that's my experience. You know, I date everybody, but the people who have desired like public long-term relationships with me are all white men, with the exception of my partner who's Mexican and Palestinian, you know, and he's the first
We
Mexican man that I've dated long-term.
we
Not
All right.
we got to say the thing, and the thing is, and I love everything Hope is saying. She's a possibility model, you know, but you can't compare Laverne to a RuPaul or to a Todrick Hall, because gay men have options and trans women do not. The option is oftentimes death or bullshit. And Black men, I'm so happy that Hope found him. I'm so happy that my sister is blessed and she found her Black king. I'm not going to wait for mine. I'm going to be happy. I saw a lot of girls online saying, oh, I'll just be single. I'm not compromising anything. I saw Olay's birthday pictures with her man and she looks extremely happy. I'm going to get mine. And if he has to be milk chocolate, he'll be milk chocolate. I don't care.
I've dated interracially. I'm not, just to be clear, I do have my Black king, but I have dated interracially. I'm not against the program, just saying.
I mean,
I do have
and I'm like also happy you interjected, and we didn't have any issue. I don't have any issue with anybody interjecting with me. And just so everybody know, I was called tense. I'm a hooker. I've slept with over 1,000 men. I'm the loosest bitch on the call. You know, I think when it comes to, you know, I'm not surprised that I have some friction with someone who is, you know, with someone who is non-binary, just because trans women who adhere to, like, you know, a specific gender, you know, gender side of the binary, we have, you know, we just, even though we're part of the same community, we have very different thoughts on how we relate to this stuff. And there's just some things that you were saying that I can't go along with, Deshaun. You called her light skinned. She not light skinned. Laverne is not. I mean, I gotta pay. You want to do the paper bag test? This is a Louis Vuitton shoebox, but she's not light skinned. So I just want to get the narrative right.
You don't know me though, and she is light skinned. And you don't know me.
Laverne, let's do color match.
I do think I would rather not. I don't think it's ever productive if we like start having a conversation about.
I agree. I don't really even know why that was even a thing. But
I didn't bring that here. I didn't bring that. I just wanted, since it was put out, I just want to correct the record because I don't think that's fair.
But what I want to say is that you don't know me.
With the time that we have left, with the time that we have left, I think that this is it's way off topic, and I think that it's not. Unfortunately, I do have a hard out, and it's what colorism is real. We all know that. But I think with the time that we have left, I think that going into that area and debating, because there's a big old bright light on me right now. And so it really depends on lighting around complexion and all that stuff. But yes.
Yeah, I think we'll move past it. But I will say one half of this call is probably, yes, light. Like once you do the brown debating, I would say Laverne, Dominique, and Quay, y'all are over here on light skin. And I would say Kat, Deshaun, Hope, and me are over here on the dark skin side of thing. I think that's
I'm not saying I'm not light skin. I'm light skin.
In fact, you're so light, you don't realize that Laverne light too.
Yes.
At this point, I'm gonna make sure we like usher on like as we keep going.
Yes.
To bring it back to Hope's something I think I'll so I can go back to the
political piece too.
So what Hope was saying, like Hope's concern on, I guess what Hope is essentially saying too is like Black trans women should be able to, even though it's not fair to Laverne, just like it's not fair to Hope. And I'm sure all of you represent some level of possibility model to people who are like, they're watching us, they're going to be watching this on, their TV or their phone or whatever have you, right? So I think what Hope is saying is that there's already a demoralization already feeling like Black trans women are growing up in the same Black community as the rest of Black cis women, are being raised to have the same love of a Black man and wanting to like seek Black love and find Black love. And it's extra demoralizing when you see somebody that you look at as the possibility and you see as having more options and more access than you, seem to deviate from that. And I guess the question that I have to what Hope was saying, like reconciling, I guess, everybody's like lived experiences versus like an ideal we want and like wanting to seek Black love is where does the obligation, I guess, like where to live people's lived experiences, like what they're actually experiencing, and the obligation to try to like be a possibility model and leave space for like people to aspire to like Black love. When does that obligation end? Like, where does it meet with people's lived experiences? Because I guess in my mind, I'm thinking, I understand exactly what Hope's saying, but I also understand, like, and that's something Quay's told me before in a different episode, is like, if your lived reality is simply that that's not who likes you, who's fucking with you, and I'm not gonna act like I'm a cis Black woman. I don't know many Black cis men that are openly telling you they date trans women or anything. I can think of one cis man in my like life, literally on an Olay and Friends episode, that said openly, "Oh, I love the dolls," and I was blown away. Never heard that shit in my life, let alone said like open on there. So I said it to say like, what happens when, of course, I'm not saying like Hope is speaking to a reality that this is possible, and it is possible to, decide to stand on principles and in all of this and the next thing in terms of love and find a great Black man. But what happens when that does feel like the exception to the rule, to what Quay was saying?
But I also think what Hope also spoke to that I think is important that we don't lose is the intersection of that the personal is political, that these are, and that Deshaun is saying that these are, we're making political choices, that when we are making who we date, it's political, and and Hope specifically in relationship to me, it's like she understands that I have a deep understanding of politics, and I think for me, there's a constant. And after this sort of blew up on the internet, and I'm constantly interrogating my own relationship to internalized racism, my own relationship to whiteness and white supremacy and power. I'm constantly trying to be critical and interrogate my relationship to all that. And where I come to the love thing is one thing, and then I think that obviously the video I put out could have been done more responsibly, but there's also like a little bit of like just to be there's a rebellion right now. I feel like that so much of my public life has been so calculated and curated and so careful, that I've tried to be so careful about everything I say, because it's going to affect the community this way or that way. And there's and the reason I'm an artist and identify as an artist first and foremost, and that this this personal story that came is that I told, and that it's happening in the context of a one-woman show, is that in the space of my art, I need to be messy. As an artist, I need to be messy. I need to be imperfect, flawed, because I think that's where the humanity is. And so, yes, I think I maybe need to be clear about the distinctions between artist Laverne and activist Laverne, or like possibility model Laverne. But in the space of my art, I needed to be messy. In terms of my life choices around who I'm dating, and I don't think I'm a victim. I don't claim being a victim. I made specific choices, and I will say this, and Kat asked earlier, what were the conversations like?
I was just about to ask you, let me make sure I bring that question back.
What were the conversations like? So it was 2020, it was late in 2020, it was after I found out he was a cop and Republican. He was like, this structural racism thing, is it really a thing? And I was like, do you really want to go there? Because at this point, I'm having fun, I'm getting my life. I'm like, do we really want to go there? Because if we're going to go there, I'm going to be Laverne. And I had just done a podcast with Richard Rothstein, so I was ready. So I said all the thing, I talked about the history, particularly of social racism in relationship to housing in this country, and I was very thorough. And after about 25 minutes of kind of a lecture, he just looks at me and then he just starts kissing me. And I was just like, okay, I guess that didn't, make him go limp. So, hey, cool. We've had conversations about privilege. We've had, and then we had to set boundaries when I made a blanket statement about the Republican Party being a fascist party. And then he made a blanket statement about Democrats. And then we had to set some boundaries about not making blanket statements. So we had to.
You said a fact. That wasn't a blanket statement. That was a fact.
That's not a. But that's.
Yes, darling, I know. But then what he said, then I was like, so I was trying to be self-critical because I did make I believe that's true as well, but it was a blanket statement. So I was like, let's, try to have some boundaries. And so I think like what the big piece for me, the big aha post relationship for me is that in Brene Brown has this thing called BIG, acronym BIG, what boundaries need to be in place in order for me to maintain my integrity while making the most generous assumption about you. And I realized post breakup that in making the most generous assumptions about my ex, I eventually allowed sacred boundaries to be crossed, and ultimately my integrity and values were compromised eventually. But I give people, I am a person who wants to give people generosity. I do. And I don't want to. And I also think what I also want to say is that with Mom Donnie, when he talked about talking to people who had voted for, I think, Biden and then voted for Trump, and why the change, that like everyone who votes Republican is not a monolith, right? Like this is a fascist party. It's a fascist regime. Right now, we have to be clear that if you voted that way, I think we have to be clear. But at the same time, there is a group, and then I think we have to see people as individuals.
I don't think my is that. I think he's a politician who like has to say that, in order to like not totally alienate. But I don't think he believes. I think if we caught that man in a room by ourselves, cameras off, he'd be like, "Fuck," no. Like
Some people. But my thing is, there is no apology when we're talking about my livelihood and the way that I show up in the world. And also, to me, it feels irresponsible. Like, I'm in a relationship with a Black man, and you need to know about what's happening to me. And if you don't, that says more to me about how you truly feel about me. I remember watching the clarification video that you made, and you were just like, oh, you told him something about like what was going on with trans people. And he's like, oh, really? I didn't know that. What the fuck you mean you didn't know that? Because you're dicking me down every day. What the fuck do you mean that you don't understand these policies if we are madly in love? And so to me, one of two things are happening. You were madly in love and he was having fun, or somewhere in the middle, somebody started lying and somebody started like putting on the rose colored glasses. Because if you love me, you care about the things that are impacting me. You care about the things that are going to hurt me. And again, this is not just about your transness. This is about the fact that you are a Black woman in America. This is about the fact that you are a woman in America. And so when you don't know what's going on, you can't tell me that you are madly in love with me when literally the people that you plan on voting for are taking away my rights and my ability to have education, my history, the things that I literally do this man, I'm sure, has had to watch you, sit in space with you while you deliver some of the best political rhetoric in the world. And you mean to tell me that after hearing all of that shit, whether it was intentional or, out the side of his ear, walk into the kitchen to get a snack while you were doing it, that he still is going to stand on that, you, and then vote against you? I have very little empathy for that. I give grace because I understand that as Black trans women, we don't always have the option to do the thing that we want to do. Sometimes we got to do the thing that is closest to where we going to get the happiness. But when you are talking about voting not just against me as a singular person, the people that I advocate for, Laverne, you fly out of your way. You get trains out of your way to go to fucking Capitol Hill and to advocate for people. This is shit that ain't got nothing to do with you. You are an actress and you still show up for these people and you lay with this man. You lay with this man who is actively telling you, I don't give a fuck about none of that shit. And you can't, I'm sorry, I don't give you a pass for being able to sit back and say things like, oh, well, we just didn't want it to get muddy. We didn't want it to get messy. You're me and I'm madly in love with you and we don't want it to get muddy and messy, bitch. It's messy the second you put your dick inside me. It's muddy the second you put your dick inside me. Can't say that I love you. I don't care about what is happening to you. I can't say that I love you and I am actively ignoring the news so that I don't have to pay attention and have conversations with you about your well-being. If I love you, I love all of you. If I love you, I want the best for you and people like you. If I love you, I am standing 10 toes down for the things that are going to make your life better. And not just because I am doing those things, but because the world is enabling itself to be able to also do those things. So I don't have to worry about what happens to you when I am not around. Because sure, you're safe. You're safe here. I got you. We going on the trips, we're doing the things. But when I am on a business trip, I don't want to have to worry that my beautiful girlfriend is walking down the street and being accosted because the world that I voted for says, you don't get a pass from me on that. No day. I'm sorry.
The only thing, thank you for that, Hope. The only thing I will say to that is, I think Kat spoke to this before, is that first of all, I didn't, so much of my life is being trans and being, political and whatever. A lot of my time with my ex, I came home and I let all that go. And I was just like, I was just a girl in love. And the moment, actually, it was really after we broke up and we were still talking. He's blocked now, but when we were still talking, and I was like, he's voted, he's gonna like take away, gender affirming care for adults and children. And he had no idea. And I hadn't had that conversation with him because I'm always having that conversation. I don't want to bring that conversation home. Then I educated him, and then he realized at this point, I'm not really talking to the man anymore, so I don't know where he's at now. But he did say that his relationship with me has impacted the way that he advocates. He's told me that people have said anti-trans things in front of him, and he is like pushed back. Cop buddies, he's pushed back against it. Allegedly, I don't know. There was 2 different calls he told me about that he went on, domestic calls that involved Black trans women, and he, I think, was more empathetic and encouraged them to report their boyfriends. And so I don't know, but I hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Laverne. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just was going to ask, when you ask him why, when he tells you he's a Republican, you ask him why he's a Republican, what is his answer? What does he believe? Because
what he initially said, thank you for that. What he initially said to me, and what I believed until other evidence presented itself, is that the Republicans are pro-cop and the Democrats aren't. Obviously, I don't agree with that, but that's he said Republicans are pro. Girl, the misinformation. When you date these people, they don't know. Bless his heart. He didn't know anything. He was filled with misinformation. Whenever he would I was like, I don't think that's right. Let's fact check that. Let's take a couple different sources. He knew nothing. He was so propagandized and misinformed. It was insane.
So that's just what I'll say. First of all, Laverne, I don't feel like as in my position or really any cis person that has weighed in on this or whatever to like judge you and participate in this conversation. I just don't think that. And 2, I also think there's a level of, and it's something I'm talking about in a different context and I've been talking to Deshaun about, but I also don't believe in holding like the most marginalized among us to a higher standard, in the sense that like there's a lot of cis women and cis people kicking your back in because they can see as a matter of fact that like, oh, Republicans or whatever hate trans people or whatever. And so that's crazy that you're doing that. Meanwhile, I literally know every 9 out of 10 cis gals I know is with a man who can't stand women, hate, you know what I mean? And like, you see it differently. So I said it to say there's a certain amount of hypocrisy that I just can't be a part of. But I will say, to what I guess people's like disconnect was, and I've seen a lot of people is like feeling like it is just being distinguished as a difference in political opinion, versus what I guess I want to state plainly is that Republicans hate trans people. It's not even just that they are voting for, something that will happen to negatively impact trans people.
They want
it has become the banner of that party to hate trans people. And I do not believe that anybody in the United States of America in this day and age, within the last 5 years, and I'm being graceful saying the last 5 years, I probably could do last 10, you know what I mean, back to Trump's first administration, let alone an NYPD cop is unaware of like how the Republicans are giving it up and carrying on, but also that the Democrats and stuff are pro-police, because the NYPD cop is in New York City that's blue as fuck, but it gives the most money to policing than any police department in the country. It has the largest police department. So I just find, to me, it feels like, to what I guess Deshaun was saying, and I say this not as like a place of judgment. I say this as somebody who has also dated interracially and like reflected on it and realized like, all these motherfuckers be lying. They be lying to you. They be tricking you. They be gaslighting you into this,
and
like,
lying to themselves.
yeah,
and
lying to themselves, and also like spinning you into thinking you can educate them, or they don't get that, or they're not sure, or whatever. Meanwhile, they know exactly what the type of time they're on, and to I guess like to understand, to also like say where I understand what you were talking about when you say, you know, this for you is like the best relationship you were in some respects. Like on one level, I'm like, when I think about the last white guy I ever dated, the last white man I ever dated, when I said, oh, no, like this, I realized like this just doesn't make sense. Like me and them, this is not me against interracial dating for other people. Me and white men don't get along. Me and non-black, like me and only black men of a aggressive leftist progressive political, you know what I mean? Only we get along. Like only me and CJ get along. He's my needle in the haystack. Me and every other man that comes to blows. But like in my experience with my last white boyfriend, what had made him, like for me at a time, it was like when I was on immigration leave, when immigration was with my ass, Trump was trying to get rid of me. I couldn't work, I couldn't make no money. I also couldn't go back home to my country without all these different things. This white guy was like, oh, paid my rent, and like in a world where men had never, like, don't do shit for me outside of my daddy, you know what I mean? I was blown away by that, and I felt like he did things like that made him feel more helpful to me, whatever. But on the flip side of that, like I find that regardless, because our world is so political, like we live, especially now, we live in a very politicized time. Your media, your everything, nothing is without political whatever have you, right? Like we could not get along. I could never feel like he loved me or fuck with me, or like this was a great experience. Like, not to say, this is not me saying that I didn't feel the same similar levels of attachment, and I want to make this. I did, delusional. He bought me a TV, paid my rent. I was like, how can I look how good I'm? Meanwhile, we are getting into it, like just watching the TV. Like we turned the TV on. I remember one time we turned TV on, and like it was an NBA game, and he went to say something about the black man's hair, and I'm like, a big fight. We went to go watch true crime one time. The true crime starts, and they were like, oh, nobody could believe that this white girl is the killer. Nobody in the town could believe that it could be her. And I was like, because she's a white girl. That's the only reason why they have that idea. That if this was a black person, they'd never be like, oh, the town. He was like, why would you say that? I said it to say, like, I find that it's the thing that I think people are confused about is that even if you want to be in love, and even all these different things or whatever, even if you want to like put it to the side and say like, you know, I'm trying to just be a girl and I'm trying to just be in love. Like, how do you manage it in this world? I guess.
I think the truth is, I mean, to just be like, I'm, you know, as honest as I can be in this moment, that there was a little bit of delusion. There was a little bit of like, I don't want to look at this. I want to tell myself a story and not look at this part. And I was able to, for 3.5 years, not look at his politics, and it didn't, you know, and we set boundaries so we could have political conversations and it could be respectful, and he didn't come out of his mouth and say anything crazy. The first time he came out of his mouth and said something crazy, I broke up with him. He worked hard and tried to give me back. 6 months later, he said something even crazier, and that was it. So just to be clear, the 3.5 years when it was good, he wasn't coming out of his mouth saying crazy shit. I disagreed, and I was like, this is not correct. But he didn't say some real crazy shit that I was like, oh, no. So, but also I think I was in denial. The stuff that was so good, I wanted that. But I wanted that, and I wanted to feel that. And I did, and I'm grateful I did. But it ultimately was never going to work out because he was going to come out of his mouth and say some crazy shit because of his politics, the uninformed, all the things, right? And so that's what happened. And I think the truth is I think it's important to talk about this stuff because it happens, and people are navigating it, and people are in denial for all kinds of reasons, and
So even though he didn't say it, this is not just a man who's just a Trump voter. This is a man who chose to enforce white supremacy every day. He put on that badge, and you know,
I was never comfortable with that. I was never comfortable. I tried. I tried. I was like, is there gonna be a moment when I'm comfortable with what he does for a living? I never was. But then he told me why he became a cop, and in the back of my mind, the whole time, I was like, Lord have mercy. I did the background check on him to see if he had any excessive force or if been involved in anything, because I was just like that. I'm not, I don't fuck with that. So
There's
so that was something I was in denial about, or just kind of not wanting to face or deal with until I had to. There was a moment, what you have to understand is there were 3 years where I just I didn't have to deal with it. It was back here, but I didn't have to fully address it. And then it came to the fore. And I talk about it in my show, but and I don't, it came to the fore and I couldn't ignore it. And that's when I had to peace out.
I will say, you know, my only issue with this is I think when the history books are written, I think you will be there, and you will be there as no, you can laugh and joke at this. I don't think that like people are really gonna just remember you as just an artist or just an actress. I really think they're gonna think of you as someone who did a paradigm shift and changed the way we think about trans people. I do. So and I don't care what you do in your personal life. I think it's just when you brought it to us, and not just bringing it to us to advertise the show. I think the follow-up video is really where I have issue, because you said something in that video. You said, I don't dehumanize anyone because of their politics. And I just want to say, we are not dehumanizing MAGA. They dehumanize themselves by what they believe in. And there's a YouTuber we both watch. The lady who won't stop telling us she go to Harvard.
Kimberly Foster?
For Harriet.
Yeah, Kimberly Foster.
Kimberly
She
Foster.
said, Kimberly Foster. She said, who you date is a reflection of your values. And that's why it's so important for her to find somebody who reflects her values. But you got to find your happiness. I just think I don't want us to pink wash or whitewash or soften MAGA in any way.
I agree.
Publicly.
Actually, I agree with that. And I think in that moment, and I have critically reflected on that moment. I think in that moment in the live, I was thinking about this individual that I knew, and not this fascist regime that is terrorizing this country and the world. So yeah, we have to be exacting, and we have to fight against this fascism. So I agree, and that was not, most of, I don't regret anything, but I think it just could have been done. I don't know. I mean, it's all, for me, it's all a life lesson. So I don't regret anything. I learn the lessons, and that's partly why I'm here, to learn the lessons and hopefully do better next time.
I want to give everybody an opportunity to do your final thoughts, because I want to let Laverne be free and also give her my little closing. So
I am running late, but I can't leave, so I'm here.
Dominique, you have been talking a while. Dominique go, then Deshawn go, Kat, Hope, Quay.
Yeah, I think one, I hope that the space in your artistry, you get that, because there are things I just said from the beginning. What do we earn by years and years of serving the world? And that doesn't mean that we earn not being accountable, but I can't fathom that we don't owe space to explore ourselves, especially those who advocate for people to have ways to explore themselves. And I think that is something we're watching from you. Maybe you haven't worded it that way, of exploring yourself. I think maybe many of us have assumed because you are Laverne Cox, you know every facet of who you are. And I just think that being a Black woman in your 40s and a Black woman in your 50s, like the things you keep learning and what does that mean? And I wish that for you. And I hope that, I appreciate that you came here, and I hope you continue to let us see you. We are better about it, because what we haven't said is there's a lot of y'all butch queens that played. It's a lot of y'all butch queens that tried it. The trans girls that played, it's some of you bitches had things on your chest you've been meaning to get off. And I just, there were videos where I was like, okay, bitch, you did too much. But that being said, I hope that you continue to give us you, and know that it may be moments like this, but also that there's so much love, that, and as Quay said, like, there is no history book about us that doesn't include a stern chapter about Laverne Cox.
Kat.
I have way too much to say, so I will try to keep it short. But one of the things that I wanted to really talk about in multiple different ways is sometimes we grant society's premise about our bodies and our possibility, right? We accept this idea that because society thinks of us as unlovable, that we are actually unlovable. And one of the things I've definitely recognized is over the years, as I've had some of these bad experiences, as I've kind of increased some of my boundaries and said I wasn't going to do certain things, the value of the men that I have been able to connect with has improved. And if I bought into this idea that there was not ever going to be a man who would ever want to do this or that, or if I treated something as simplistic as going out in public with me and being nice to me as like the just the ambrosia from God, it would just end up putting me in a lot of bad situations. It's okay to accept this idea that you deserve more than that. And I actually do think that when you accept that, you get that. I think that
Do
you
you
can't.
think do you think I believe that I deserve that? Do you think I believe that I'm lovable,
I
or are
think
you questioning it?
I
Because I feel
think
like a lot of people have questioned that.
I think that you love yourself. I do think you love yourself, but I also think that it requires a dissonance to have a conversation with this guy who you have had a positive experience with. I'm granting, but have had he's very clearly was not invested enough in the conversations about your survival to be aware of what was going on. That is a huge red flag. And one thing that I've
Mhm.
I've been accepting more and more recently is bad politics right now in this exact moment. That shit's going to get me, if not killed, unprotected. You know, it's not, it is, I've lived in conservative communities for most of my life. I've had conversations with these people. I know intellectually and personally that maybe not all of them are bad people, but every last one of them is voting against my rights. And so it actually doesn't matter if they don't quite know or if they da 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 da. Like, yeah, some people need to be talked to. Some people are ignorant. A lot of these people live in isolated communities away from the city and things that are different from them, and they are ignorant. They don't know. But one thing I've seen at this point in my life, after dating these men and some of them never leaving my feed, is that these men don't change and they know what they're supporting. Right. And a lot of these men get off on putting you in a situation where you're hungry for them, where you're justifying yourself to them. I mean, there's a lot of men on social media posting septum ring theory who are subscribed to alternative women on OnlyFans, right? Like men get a lot of these dudes, they get off on putting you in that position where you're begging for something from them or you're justifying yourself to them. And I do think that loving yourself does actually mean accepting that you don't need to have these conversations. That the men who are in your life should already know, should actually be talking about it more than you. I mean, one thing I do appreciate about my partners is they talk about it more than I do, because I talk about it online and I'm like, I'm done. Um, they are passionate about this stuff. They care about these things because it's important to them. I'm
Mhm.
important to them. And I think
Mhm.
that it is important for any trans woman, any marginalized minority, anyone to really not downplay politics, especially with your relationships. I've just had so many bad experiences with conservative men where, yeah, at first they're nice, da 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 da, but you realize that their politics really are indicative of how they're going to treat you.
The person is political.
It
The
Yeah,
person is
it is.
political.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. So I think that, I think you definitely love yourself very much, but I think that there's an added layer. And I'm not, I've said this many times. I think people have reasons to be disappointed, but I understand a lot of what
Yeah.
puts you in that position. And I personally think that, as some of people have said earlier, I don't, of the people that I'm interested in dogpiling and, attacking, it's Black trans women are not on the top of that list. They really are not. And I think that in a society where we're all sort of pressured into placating to these people, that path is a little bit more predictable than not. It's something that a lot of women are talking about right now. As Olay says, there are several women right now who are in relationships with men who hate women. That is so common. That is so incredibly common. Men who will date women but hate them. And if you listen to a lot of the stories of women who realize that their husband hated them, they don't find that shit out for years, because men will often try to extract as much from you as possible. They will try to get as much from you as possible. That's why they'll withhold information. That's why he didn't tell you he was a conservative, because he wanted something from you. He wanted to get something from you. And I think that it's important for all women to just be aware of that it is actually quite rare for a man to truly love a woman, whether or not she's cis or trans. Loving a woman means being politically invested in her survival. And unfortunately, a lot of men are not. A lot of men are not. So I think, you have this experience. I had many similar. I look at that as like, now I know for a fact we got to talk about politics right away. And I have to be very clear about whether or not you're actually going to show up for me. I talk about this in my blog, but I dated this guy who was a liberal Jewish dude. He decided to leave the country because he was starting to get nervous about genocide. And he didn't even tell me about it until the plans were made, right? I'm in an incredibly genocidable group, right? But this man who I've been sharing my body with, who I'd had many conversations about politics with, he was an Elon Musk fanboy before he threw the Nazi sign, but was still posting, shit about trans people on Twitter. I'd spent all this time placating to this dude, trying to get him to understand, but at the end of the day, when shit really got real, he packed up and left me behind to fend for myself. It's important to understand, especially right now, that the men who are going to be in your life are actually going to show up for you. Are they actually willing to punch that Nazi or do something that would actually protect you? I think that's super important, regardless of whether or not it's exacting violence or not. I think it's very, very important to just have a partner who's invested enough in you to care about you. And men in
That's
this
beautiful, Ken. I
society,
think we have to move on, but that's
men in
that's
this society are not
stunning.
actually motivated to do that. That's what I was going to say.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Sean.
Do you want to final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that I think that, and this is not about Black trans women specifically, this is about Black folks at large. I think that we have to get to a point where we are willing to choose our morals, our ethics, our values, our politic over any relationship. I think that is the point that I've reached, and that we have to be clear about the fact that in many ways, love, this hope for love, really keeps us beholden to a level of violence and abuse and harm that that quells any sort of possibility for liberation. And so I just think that at some point we have to be honest about the fact that we need liberation more than we need to be striving for this sort of fantastical idea of love.
Hope.
It's Hope.
Because I know Hope got a flight, so I was like,
Okay.
Hope.
Right. Can y'all hear me?
Yes. Final thoughts.
So I think that first and foremost, what I want to say is, Laverne, I love you deeply. I care about you. I'm inspired by you. I think that without you, a lot of the work that I do, so many other folks do, probably wouldn't be possible or look the way that it does. I, however, still think that in all of our continued growth, because I think that that's what I was missing. It wasn't the grace. I was missing the fact that you're a person who is still growing, and being older than me and having more lived experience than me doesn't absolve you from the opportunity to continue to get to know yourself even further.
I agree. Absolutely.
And so I think that what I leave this with is exactly what Deshaun is leaving it with, is that regardless of the way that people show up, we have to show up for ourselves first and foremost. And when people show us who they are, I hate to use the cliche, but we have to believe them the first time. And in the event that something feels good on the surface, but it is causing rot in the middle, you got to get rid of that before it poisons everything else. And I'm glad that I think ultimately that's exactly what you told us, is that you got rid of it before You got the root canal and put the crown on before the rest of your mouth started to rot. And we missed that.
Absolutely.
I missed
And
that.
15 years ago, and obviously that wasn't in the, I was teasing a show, so I wasn't saying all that. 15 years ago, I would have stayed longer and it would have gotten really bad, but that's not the Laverne of today. Thank you, Hope.
Oh, you're still talking
That's
about.
all. Moreover, that's all that I think that I care about from this conversation, and the fact that I believe that I came into this a little frustrated with you because I felt like you were unaware of the impact. And I think that nobody was giving you the opportunity for real, to hear you say, no, I'm understanding. I want to get a better understanding. And to Olay's point, anybody that can come and sit and let 6 people give you shit about your life, your business, something that they have no control over, and something that doesn't truly impact them, and be gracious and be unmoving in some of their opinions, but also wavering and willing to open up to others, I'm going to commend you 10 toes down, because a lot of people are not willing to jump in this circle of fire and say, give it to me raw. And anybody that can do that is a bad bitch in my book. We already knew that, but I think
Thank you.
in this instance where you did not have to give us audience, I am grateful for that. And I'm also grateful to see that on all sides, everybody learned something new today. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And Quay, and then I'll close this up. Quay, you go.
Oh, what about Dominique?
Dominique went first.
Oh, okay. Mother, I don't care what you do, because you've done so much good. And the only thing I would say I'm disappointed that you wore the blonde, because I knew they were going to try to strip your blackness from you. And that just gives them more of an opportunity. I think that you're in your Lizzo moment, and, you just presented yourself as one thing. And now that we found out that the narrative is complicated, they just gonna try to attack you. Since everything is already messy and you already on everybody's bad side, just go ahead and speak about Gaza. Just go ahead and just go all the way. And the last thing is, I do understand that desire is influenced by white supremacy and all that, but I have a dick. And I know what gets me excited and what doesn't. And I'm just going to follow my happiness. And I hope other people do as well. And it's important to engage with theory. It's important to engage with works, like everyone on this call, like Deshaun's works. But at the end of the day, you just got to be happy. What you do privately and publicly, they can be two different things. And I'll just lastly say, I'm looking forward to you coming on to executive produce my short film Motherhood, where I play the first Black trans woman who gets pregnant, and opening for your show. And it was said that people didn't know me. Well, if you don't know, now you know.
Great hand. May I just say briefly,
Of course,
thank you everyone. Thank you, Olay, for this. I'm grateful for all of your love, and there's been so much love. And when there's a pylon, it affects friends and family more than it affects like me, really. I just kind of logged off, and so all the love that has been shown to me by so many people, like my friends and family, like really appreciate it. And I just thank you all for wanting to engage with me. And yes, I'm 53 years old, but I feel like I'm just getting started. I don't feel like I know everything. I'm still I'm still reparenting my inner child. I'm dealing with like realizing I had a narcissistic parent, and that's how I'm navigating relationships in part. And so I'm in this place of discovery. I've always understood that the personal is political. I'm still processing that last relationship. Being public about it in the way that I did, definitely tone deaf AF, and just didn't, without context. And I'm not above reproach. I'm a human being, and I've always asserted that. And yeah, and I think it gets really complicated when it comes to love. But what I do believe, though, is that love is everything. And I'm not talking about romantic love. I'm talking about the love that we have in community, the love that we can have for art, for beauty. That love, for me, love is everything. And I'm romantic in that way, but it's not, the love I'm seeking, the love that I have now, it's not even I'm seeking, it's here. It's not about a romantic love. It is a love for myself. I chose myself. I loved myself more than him. I did not betray myself. I choose, and I'm surrounded by love. And that's everything. That's everything to me. Yeah, and I don't believe. I believe everyone should have equal rights, Quaytan, in every
Laverne, I
country.
love you so much. Thank you, like, so much again. You know, I told you in text message, I'll never get tired of telling you and telling everybody, I love you down. You are
I
so
love you down.
wonderful to me. You always show up for me. You support the shit out of me. I've never met a person who is so humble like that. Like I said, that's one of the things you told me, like when you talked to me, like, oh, being willing to be called in and yada yada. I ain't found a time yet on the internet where people have been kicking my back in and I've been willing to hear them talk that shit. Ain't no way. Six people could have been my best friends and I was cussing everybody here, clean the fuck out. So it means a lot to me to see, like, I know there are all these people who don't know you, whatever, on the internet, and they're saying, like, based on what they think about you and your politics and what they think you're obligated to do and live in your personal life, they are saying that they believe that there's this contradiction and hypocrisy and all these different things. But that is not what I see. Because from the you that I know who has told me, like, I'm going to make mistakes. I don't know everything, but I have to be willing to care about community and being called in and being, that to me is what you have demonstrated from the second I text you and you were like, yeah, I'll do it. And that you came here and you showed up and you listened. Like, I just never seen anything like it. I don't have it in me. So I just want you to know I love you so much. And
I
I'm so
love you
grateful you
too.
came here
I
today.
love you so much, and I support. You're so brilliant. I love trans people so much, and I love Black people so much, so much. I love us. I love us so much, and we are so beautiful, and we're so amazing and anointed. And knowing that the history, the legacy that lives inside of us is just, I think, the most beautiful thing in the world. And so I just wanted to. I love my people, and so when they read, some people got to kiki and cackle in the reading, and it's all good. It's all good, and I still, even as I'm critiqued by my people, I still love my people.
Stop what you're doing and listen up. You just watched a video on one of my channels, but the Illuminati verse is huge, and I want to tell you what everything is and how to find it. The Illuminati verse has 6 channels. On the YouTube homepage of any one of those channels, every single channel in the Illuminati verse is featured at the bottom of the page, so you can always easily find them. Okay? Remember I said that. Don't say I ain't tell you how to find it. Subscribe to my main channel, Illuminati, to find my Illuminati productions, which are my long form video essays, and also all of my backlog of content. Subscribe to my second love child, Illuminati Pop, for my weekly video essays analyzing my favorite TV and movie shows and characters. Illuminati Pop also has its own Patreon where you get all of those videos uncensored. Subscribe to my channel, Olay and Friends, for my podcast, Olay and Friends. New episodes of Olay and Friends come out every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to Olay and Chill for new episodes of my podcast, Olay and Chill, every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And also, both Olay and Friends and Olay and Chill are both available on streaming platforms like Spotify. Subscribe to Illuminati Bites if you want my takes, but you don't have an hour to spend. Subscribe to Illuminati Politics for my political analysis and my State of the Union type addresses on my show O Squared. And last but not least, subscribe to my Substack Illuminati for my written work.